Hello and welcome to Celtic Rumours TV, the Bawz and Bovril podcast with your host Mark, Chris and myself Paul. On today's show, Mark will run through a few shout-outs, Chris will run through this weekly rumours. We'll also have ex-footballer David Forbes, known on the forum as Iceman. Barry will give us an insight into what it was like to be a professional footballer. We'll also be answering some questions from the line chat in relation to Barry's career. So let's get on to the show. Mark, off to you.
Thanks very much. Just like to thank everybody for joining us tonight. All the subscribers, we're at nearly 320 now. If you have not subscribed, then please do so. Like to give Tim Alloy a shout out. He's still really struggling to fully recover after COVID. So he's a good egg, is Tim. So best wishes to him. And all the best to Malika, still stuck out there in Spain. And ROH is fighting that another hell of a tough battle. And finally, Steph Boy for the Forum's son, Ben, had an operation in his leg yesterday. He's in hospital now recovering for that. So if all is on here, get well soon, Ben. Hail, hail.
So now we're going to move to the weekly rumours. Besty, can you take us through some rumours of the day, please?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Welcome to the show, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rumour Roundup. Now, just before we actually get on to the Rumour Roundup, I just want to give a personal shout out myself to two lads, Ryan and Kieran, down in Newcastle upon Tyne, two proud Irish lads who are Celtic through and through. Guys, welcome to the show. And you're also very welcome to comment or ask a question on the right side of the screen, and we'll try and pick it up. If either of you ever want to come on live, just let us know in advance and we'll make it happen for you. Also, a massive happy hoopy birthday to Ryan's son Owen. Owen had his first birthday yesterday, so happy birthday, Owen. Trust me, your dad is guiding you on the right football and path, kids, so make sure you listen to him. Welcome, guys. So on we go. As I say in every podcast, rumours are rumours. Believe nothing, and more importantly, bet nothing until you satisfy yourself you're doing the right thing. Now, I'm sure there are a few punters who have lumped heavy onto Eddie Howe over the last 5 or 6 days at the bookies, thinking it was a certainty, but just might be having second thoughts about it now. Are they right to be worried, or is it in the bag? Well, we'll come on to that shortly. Don Mackay, as we all know, is coming on Monday, 19th of April. He's going to work along with Peter Lawwell until the 1st of July when he takes over the CEO role. The manager's position, well, is it Eddie Howe or whoever? You know, a lot of fans are irritated, aren't they? You know, some say it's not going to happen. Others think he's waiting on a better offer from down south. Plenty believe he wants his own director of football. And I've heard some say it's because his family don't want to come to Scotland, among other stories. Not least the one that Crystal Palace have allegedly thrown their hat into the ring for his services in the last couple of days. So all you guys that are listening, think about this. Would Eddie Howe be better suited to South London than he would be to Glasgow? Would he feel more comfortable at a club that thinks survival in the league is as good as actually winning something? Other journalists and pundits are suggesting that the deal will happen with Howe, and all they're really doing is both sides are simply taking their time and making sure they each have a clear understanding of the way it's going to work. So by all means, keep an eye on the media headlines, but don't be getting carried away with them. Now, to add further fuel to the vacant managerial fire, another voice has been making noise today about Eddie Howe, and that is our old friend Frank McAvenny. Now, Frank's controversial at times, we all know that. But, excuse me, he says he has been told that the problem is Richard Hughes. It's not that Celtic don't want Hughes. It's more a case of Eddie Howe does want him, but Hughes himself is reluctant to bring his children up to live in Glasgow. We hear all these stories, and every story that we hear, guys, please remember that Celtic Football Club didn't write any of them. Now, some fans will say, well, it's about time Celtic did come out with a story about what they're doing. So here's something for you all to think about. Should the club stick with their plan to get Eddie Howe no matter how long it takes, or should they move on? Is Roy Keane's name going to come back into the frame again? Are the previous runners in the race perking their ears and getting ready to show their hand? Or is it all much ado about nothing and Eddie Howe is actually coming? So let us know what you think. You're among friends, guys. Get the thoughts off your chest. Moving on to player rumours, not really much happening there. Obviously, we've said before, Celtic are unlikely to buy any players until a new manager is confirmed. However, one story that has popped up suggests that if it is Eddie Howe, then his first call will be to Carlo Ancelotti at Everton about getting Josh King as a replacement for Hudson-Edouard, who we most of us expect to move on in the summer unless something happens. Now, in all fairness, I don't think that's going to happen even if Howe does come in. King's wages at Everton are reported to be significantly higher than any of our top earners. So here's a question. In future, and if we really do want to make an impact in Europe, should we be prepared as a club to pay higher wages than we already do if it means we're getting higher quality players? Could we afford to do it? Give us your thoughts on those questions, guys. A name that popped up just a couple of days ago, if you remember when Neil Lennon was still in charge, which seems like an eternity ago now, but just a short number of weeks ago. Young Josh Doig up at Hibs, Celtic were reported to be interested in that. Now, we don't know if there was any real mileage in that, but apparently Leicester have now shown an interest in him. But a player who is on our books and could make an impact on the squad is young Leo Hjeld. Now, young Hjeld, he's the 17-year-old Norwegian defender who we signed from Rosenborg last year, and he's been on loan at Ross County since January. He's played 8 games for them, scored his first senior goal. But however, he's reported to be interested in Mr. Hasenhüttl down at Southampton. Now, Big Yoki Hughes at the Staggies rates the youngster very highly, and he reckons that the lad won't be too far away from Celtic's first team when he does return to Parkhead. Moving on, Lee Griffiths, it was mentioned on the forum and even on the last podcast, Mark had mentioned it, that his contract is going to finish at the end of the season with Celtic having a 1-year option. But if they want to exercise that, they must do it before the 30th of April. So that's 3 weeks away from now. Now, Griff divides opinion among fans. So here's the question. Should the club take up the option for another season, or should we say goodbye? Talk to us. Let us know how you feel about Griff staying or going. Has he blown his chances, or can he redeem himself next season if he stays? On the rumours, the last mention goes to Jack Hendry. It's always reassuring when you can get a comment direct from a player instead of a so-called reliable source. Hendry has confirmed himself that his agent and Ostend are trying to get the deal completed with Celtic. Now, remember, we have no negotiating power in this deal apart from perhaps how the money is paid, and we can't insist that he comes back. The price was set before he went on loan to the Belgian side, so it looks like he's going to be away very soon. So in hindsight, was this deal a mistake by Celtic? Did we ship Jack Hendry out too early? So let us know what you think about his exit. And as far as rumours are concerned, that's more or less it for now. There's no doubt news stories will be breaking every hour, but in the meantime, it's back to Paul.
So we just have here from Will.I.Am7 that Eddie Howe is what waiting for, as long he's not mucking us about. Just kind of two things to put that. Really, is he waiting for Crystal Palace or Newcastle to actually come in for him?
Well, is
he waiting for an offer from them, to see what his other options are?
I think the story is that, look, at the end of the day, his agent wouldn't be doing his job properly if he wasn't keeping him aware of any options that might become available.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
We don't know for sure whether Newcastle or Crystal Palace genuinely and sincerely and officially have made an approach for him. But look, the bottom line is, until he signs up and we see him at Celtic Park, then there's always going to be the possibility that another club could make a move. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens with that.
So has it been put through? So has Celtic actually put a contract to Eddie Howe, and he's waiting to make that decision?
Nobody knows that, really, do they? I mean, again, it's all just speculation. And
yeah, we actually don't know what's going on. We don't know if Celtic actually did put an offer to Eddie Howe.
We can take the fact that Desmond met Eddie Howe.
Mm-hmm.
Who else? We don't know who else has he met.
Because I read another thing there now that he's assistant.
These negotiations, they're at a level I don't understand. I couldn't negotiate a contract for a football manager. The to and froing and the intricacies of what they must get into in detail in these contracts. I don't think Eddie Howe is stalling anybody. If he is the Dermot Desmond wants, he's quite entitled to take his time and speak to his family and that about it.
Mhm.
A lot of fans expected Celtic to announce Eddie Howe and they'd start on Monday morning and things like that.
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
never going to happen.
never going to happen.
There will be
What's your
other teams that are interested in Howe. There's no doubt about that. But we've got to put towards him a package that blows them out the water. Not financially, but in football terms, as we've sell him the points we've got, come and win trophies with Celtic, help nurture players, prove yourself in Europe, and you'll get a
yeah?
bigger job than England and Crystal Palace in 4 years' time.
I think
Exactly.
certainly someone like Eddie Howe, guys, it's worth bearing in mind that he's not waiting on a fiver to put into his electric meter. You know, he has his money made. He could probably never work again in his life and be very, very comfortable. So whilst money won't be nothing as part of it, it'll be obviously part of the negotiations, but it really depends, I think, on how keen Howe is to push himself and to see what he is really capable of achieving and whether he can manage at a club that's playing. And look, at the end of the day, you're still playing in front of 60,000 fans at home games when the law allows it. So I think a big, and to be honest, I don't think Howe is looking for an easy touch. I genuinely think, he's too young. If he was 20 or 25 years older, you'd say, well, maybe he just wants to, still be involved, but not do anything too demanding. I think Eddie Howe's under no illusions that if he comes to Celtic, it's going to be a massive challenge, not just on the field, but off the field as well. It's a whole new life to adapt to. And I guess he has to weigh up, does he feel as if he has the energy and the enthusiasm and the desire to do that?
Yeah, just to relate to what you're saying there, Terence Casey's just saying, I think Eddie Howe is looking at every aspect of the club. It's not, as you said there, Chris, like it's not just the first team. It's actually way through the football and system at the club. Maybe he's actually looking through that. Do we have a proper academy here? Or
that shouldn't be his. That should be nothing to do with him.
Mm-hmm.
So as I said, it's folk higher up the chain than Eddie Howe that need to be making any decisions about the academy and that. Maybe that's why he's pushing or even recommending that guy to come in as a director of football, because he knows at club Celtic size and with their resources, he knows that guy could do a job for Celtic after what he done for Bournemouth.
But what's your thoughts on that then? Like in Eddie Howe wanting to pick his own director of football. Say Eddie Howe then does get an offer in 2 years' time, he leaves Celtic, then he's going to want his own director of football, his own coaching staff to go again. And we're going to be back to square one then that we were with Rodgers. When he left, he took on most of the coaching staff with him as well. Only for John Kennedy wanted to stay at that time.
Again, that's just what we're reading in the papers and on social media. We don't know that how it's forcing that. For all we know, Dermot Desmond's asked him if you get anybody you could recommend. I mean,
that's true.
4 weeks ago, everybody was certain it was going to be that Harkin for Man City.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Mm-hmm.
Eddie Howe's demanding this and Eddie Howe's demanding that. And it's not just hearsay. Maybe he has recommended him, maybe he has said he would be able to do a job, maybe he is forcing it, I don't know, but it doesn't really make much sense for him to interfere at that level before he's even get in the door.
That's true. Like, do you never heard of a manager kind of recommending a kind of a director of football? Director of football kind of be mostly hired by the club to suit the club.
Well,
and
sure,
then the manager,
Yeah, absolutely, Paul, because as it has been quoted before, and I think we've all read it, the last thing a club needs is a director of football that goes with the manager, or a director of football that can only work with one manager. The director of football should be an integral part of the overall management of the club, not necessarily good, a good working relationship with just one man. He has to be someone who's employed by the club, who fits the future intentions of the club, and then the manager should come below that. But as Mark said, who knows? Maybe Dermot Desmond has said to Eddie Howe, "What about Richard Hughes? Is he? We're looking to fill that role. You've worked with him. Is he a good guy?" Nobody knows, and everything is speculation. And I think what fans need to do, and I've said it before, is be patient. Getting frustrated about it is doing nothing but creating negative talk right throughout the fan base, whether it's on our forum or another forum or anywhere else. And it's given it's given an awful lot of the press a huge amount of satisfaction to see it. And all they know all they have to do is throw a little bit of fuel on the fire, come out with a headline, how not coming to Celtic, and it's all Celtic's fault. And of course, you're going to have a certain section of the support will say, yeah, our club always mess everything up. Now, okay, they have a bit of a track record of not getting everything right, and you have to accept that. But at the same time, fans need to be patient, because all of this frustration is doing nothing, absolutely nothing, other than increasing your own blood pressure and making your life miserable and affecting your family relationships, because they're sitting like a wind-up spring. They can't influence. I'm a believer that you get concerned and worried about the things that you can influence.
So, do you think they have a plan B, Celtic, if Eddie Howe falls through? Is there another manager there that they think they could get if they don't get Eddie Howe?
Who knows, Paul? Who knows?
That's where Keno comes into the equation again, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Keno and Duff, and probably bringing back Robbie Keane as his first signing as well.
I'm just throwing out there. I'm just saying it. Like, I actually wouldn't be surprised if Keane got the job, and this Eddie Howe thing was never in the thing like that. That Keane was always going to be the number one. And if all comes to all, I think we could end up with John Kenny at the end of the season if he wins the Scottish Cup.
No,
you never know.
No, that's never.
I'm just saying it.
No,
I can't say it, and I certainly know. I certainly know for sure of one guy who'll be very, very disappointed if Eddie Howe doesn't get the gig, because he whacked a few quid on him to get it. I won't mention Ronan's name on the air, but there you go.
So we got one here from Glasgow Ring. Should a director of football not be having an input in who the manager should be instead of the other way? I think we kind of just talked about that. It's normally the other way around, but maybe Eddie Howe worked with this fella Richard Hughes. He trusts him. He trusts the players he brings in.
Well, in an ideal situation, a director of football is always going to have an input, or should have an input, into who the manager should be, for the simple reason that the director of football is part of the club. Managers come and go. In an ideal scenario, directors of football don't or shouldn't be coming and going. So, yes, it's always, I think any club that has a director of football would normally assume that role, or at least that would be a big part of their remit, would be to get involved in the hiring of managers and so on. So, to have the tail wagging the dog is quite unusual. But again, it's only speculation that some fans think that's happening. We don't know if it's happening.
Exactly. So I think, look, we'll call it there with the manager situation, because everyone's in the same boat. We actually don't know what's going on. It's all speculation. All we can do is just read the papers and just wait.
Well, exactly. I see just there on the live chat, Dom Niven saying, what if Eddie Howe is not certain he'll get the job at this point, and his agent is keeping his options open if the move to Celtic falls through? Well, like we said earlier, his agent wouldn't be doing his job right if he wasn't doing that. Mm-hmm. Right up until the day Eddie Howe would sign a contract with Celtic or with Crystal Palace or Newcastle or Timbuktu Rovers, his agent is employed to get him the best working conditions and circumstances that he can. So yes, Dom, it's a sensible question, absolutely. But that's an agent's job, is to do that. It's the same way if it was the agent of a player. His job is to tout him around as many potential clubs as he can to get the best deal and so on.
So I just throw a note there what Chris said there at the start there, like, if you were Eddie Howe, what would you go for? Would you go for Celtic, a big rebuild, push for the league next season, a chance to prove yourself in Europe, and another chance to move to a better club than Crystal Palace in the Premier League? Or would you move to Crystal Palace? Fair enough, you might be on better wages or thing, and be in another relegation fight, because realistically, that's what Crystal Palace will be in. And again, next season is another relegation fight.
One of the choices that Eddie Howe's to make is whether he jump on that roundabout English managers that have just called the game for years, like Sam Allardyce and that. They've just went from job to job to job, and that's what Eddie Howe needs to watch he doesn't become.
I don't think Sam Allardyce will be jumped from job to job, because his reputation has gone this year for West Brom go down.
Roy Hodgson, that type of manager. There's these managers in England.
Exactly.
Steve Bruce, they always seem to get jobs without actually.
Yeah, just going into the jobs, just to going into a job, really, like, isn't it? Yeah,
So go from one mid-table club to another just for over the
yeah.
20 years, and they're always in a job but never actually
It's a safe. It's,
staying
it's
in
kind of a
the game.
safe option, really, isn't it? It's kind of a safe option for a manager. Just go to a club, you know, you're going to keep them mid-table. The board is happy with you keeping them mid-table. If you're in a relegation fight, they'd be happy to end the season just to stay in the Premier League, and they think that's a success. But here's a point for Eddie Howe, like, to go beyond that, really, isn't it? Show what he can do, rebuild, like exact same with Brendan Rodgers. Rebuild your career, rebuild your reputation. You know.
You see, Eddie Howe is going to be in a position, because there is apparently so much work that needs to be done at Celtic. You know, as Mark said, you know, that's not all going to be discussed and agreed over a cup of coffee in a hotel in London. You know, there's a huge amount of work involved in finding. I think the key is that both Celtic and possibly Eddie Howe find common ground, because it is important that when they do start working together, that A knows what is expected of B, and B knows the support they're going to get from A. Because the last thing they want, it's like any job. It doesn't matter what it is, you know. The last thing you want to do is walk in the door and then find out 2 days later, oh, didn't know it was going to be like this. The one thing about Eddie Howe is he seems to be a very strategic thinking guy. So why should that not extend to not just to how he deals with players, but how he deals with his own career and any role that he fulfills and the people that he works with? It stands to reason that he would adopt that same mentality when trying to organise the circumstances to allow him the best opportunity to be successful.
Exactly. So I think, look, we cut it with the manager situation. I just want to move on to what you were saying about Lee Griffiths and the squad. Like, we know Lee Griffiths not going to be the only player realistic that might be leaving at the end of the season. So what do you think of this thing with Lee Griffiths? That if he's not offered a contract extension by the end of April, he's able to go on a free transfer. Should the club offer him a contract and then maybe sell him, or realistically keep him? Or
He's not going to sign a contract if the club's planning on selling him, is he?
mm-hmm.
A bit low for the club to get me sign a contract and then turn around and say, right, you can go if we can get £1 million for you. So I've said before we spoke about his time's up. I was reading, if Buzz Bombs about he can maybe confirm it. I saw something earlier on and it said he's only scored 24 goals in the last 3 seasons.
Yeah, but I'm actually surprised, that the club did that, Mark. You know what I mean? That they let this, like, we could obviously, as you said there, we could easily get 1 million for him. Like, if the club actually did give him a deal, we say back in December, and then sell him on.
Sinclair, see when Scott Sinclair.
Yeah.
Scott Sinclair signed, and it was I put links up on the forum at the time when I spoke about this on the forum, and it was Celtic. The official Celtic site had the article, delighted to sign him in a 4-year deal, and then it came up for an extension, and it turned out that it was actually only a 3-year deal with a year's option. So it seems that Celtic have got a habit of doing this. They're announcing players have signed for X amount of years, but if it turns out that the final is an option and it doesn't come to light, it comes near the time when the contract's due to expire.
I have to say, if it was up to me, I would be taking Griffiths for the extra year. I genuinely would, because a new manager could be the difference, and Lee Griffiths still has it in his legs to be a top striker for another season if he is in shape to do it, both physically and mentally. Now,
you could put it this way.
Nobody knows how that would work out, but
you could say like this, like, like the way how relaxed things were under Neil Lennon, the training and stuff like that. Maybe Griffiths knew he'll get away with not being fit, come back to pre-season, that Lennon wasn't going to punish him that much, really. Maybe he thought that, but under new manager, Griffiths might know, like, if he did come in there, he's going to be out the door with a new manager in place,
And for all we know, it may already have been agreed. For all we know, the club may have already told Griffiths, Lee, you're going to be free to go. I think if he does go, he will go to Aberdeen.
Well, the person that told me, that emailed me, because if you remember, they actually emailed me during the show about it.
He did, yeah.
And it was, but according to him, it came from Lee Griffiths' own mouth, that Neil Lennon told him that he wouldn't be getting a new contract, or this contract wouldn't be getting extended. So,
I think so, yeah. But with Lennon out of the equation, maybe that changes it.
I don't know. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I think maybe the club actually sees well like that the fans are actually kind of fed up the way Lee Griffiths' attitude is. Do you know like how many chances has he got realistically, Chris, with the club?
I wanted to sign Griffiths, and I was quite vocal about it at the time. I just didn't. I never really liked him as a player, and I didn't really like him as a person. For what I
You know, with the wage he's on, like we could actually go and try to bring in a different striker.
cut him the slack, and he has been a good player. He scored us a lot of goals, a lot of important goals and that, but he's never just seemed to screw the nut. Most players, as they get older, you'll think they're going to settle down a bit. Look at Scott Brown. But Griffiths he never seemed to actually settle down. As I say, maybe something to do with his mental health. I'm not going to sit and talk about somebody's mental health that I don't personally know. So, but it's just, there was always something just bubbling under the surface with Griffiths.
I think certainly with Griffiths, you see in years to come, when he looks back in hindsight, I think he'll be very regretful that he didn't apply himself the way he should have done, because I think he would have been significantly more successful as a player than he has been if he had done so. But listen, we're all geniuses, when it comes to hindsight. But I think why he annoys so many fans is because it's clear that the potential was there and he wasn't making the most of it.
Griffith had the potential to play in the Premier League in England. See, when he was younger, if he'd screwed the nut then, when he was at Wolves, he went to down there. If he'd went down there and played well, screwed the nut and went on, he would have ended up getting a move up to the higher division. Because he's
after that
proved for Celtic he can play at a higher level in the English Championship.
Yeah.
After the Bendy River interview, Mark, he went downhill, I think, after the Bendy River interview.
Bendy Water.
The Bendy Water, sorry.
Paul, do you think it was the Bendy Water interview that actually finished him mentally?
Yeah, he started to believe that the earth was flat, and that's when all these conspiracy theories went into his head.
Well, you see, you don't know, because maybe he has spent every minute of every game ever since then actually with it in the back of his mind, wondering. Maybe he's run around asking opposition defenders if they've heard of it.
Enough all night watching YouTube videos about flat.
YouTube, yeah.
We've all been
Halloween. Then he's getting paranoid then at Halloween and all these people coming to the store.
I see there, guys. Terence Casey there saying Griff's his own worst enemy. The guy needs a serious reality check, and maybe leaving Celtic will be it. He has let us down too much. Terence, I think there's a lot of people would agree with every word you've said. Personally, I just think there's still something in him that he has to give, but I might not be right. That's just my opinion.
So I want to put two comments together there, right? There's one from Don Nevin and one from Rob McNair, and two of them are quite similar. So Dom says at the end of season, there are going to be quality players out of contract. Don't need to spend big to improve, right? So then Rob Nick says we need to reduce our squad size, but we could pay higher wages for the right individuals. So we do have a big squad with really average players that don't come in and actually make a difference in the club. So, like, if we actually sign quality players instead of bigger squads, maybe we could actually bring in these better players.
Before as well, I've not got a problem with transfer fees at Celtic pay, because there's a limit. There's only so much you can pay. But I'd like to see pay a wee bit more to see like one or two players that are really going to improve the team. I don't see a problem with them getting 50 grand a week. People say because he's unrest in the dressing room. Well, how do guys at Juventus feel sitting with Ronaldo when he's Gareth Bale at Spurs is still getting 250 grand a week or something like that? If you're one of the top players, you deserve the top wages. So Celtic bringing in a couple of players at the 40 odd grand to 50 grand bracket that's really going to make a difference to the team should be within our capabilities. Especially look at the money. Look at the salary Peter Lawwell was getting.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. See there, Rob on the live chat, Rob McNair saying Lennon said there was stuff happening behind the scenes which had an impact on your season. Do you know what it was that happened? Unfortunately, Rob, no, we don't know. you know, you hear all these things saying, oh, it's going to come out and maybe it will come out and maybe it was just a lot of nonsense. You know, maybe it was Lennon was having the issues behind the scenes as opposed to the whole club. I don't know either way.
I think the French lads caused a lot of problems. Julian, everybody was saying that it was Ayer that was really wanting out, but for what I've been told, it wasn't really Ayer. Ayer just would have moved on if there was a decent offer for him that Celtic accept it. He would be happy to go. But he wasn't pushing it, whereas Julian Encham, and I don't think Edward was too impressed. We didn't sign him, sell him in the summer either. And I think that kind of got into the squad and ate away. And Christie's just, well, I'm not even getting into him again.
It just shows how professional Ayer was this season. He wanted to leave at the start of the season. He said it, he wanted to leave and thing. But he actually put his head down this season and got on with the game. But you had the likes of Encham, you had Julian, and Eduardo just fell off the bandwagon and just refused to play, basically.
For me,
you see the difference in players.
Ayer's been my player of the year.
Oh, without doubt. And I actually would, if I was a manager coming in, whoever it may be, like, he would be the first person I would try to keep at the club. I know it's going to be kind of a mission impossible, he wants to leave, but I would try at least to keep him, Oh,
I think they've got to try. I don't think they'll be successful, but they've got to try, whether that's offering him the captaincy or offering him a serious wage. But I think,
could that unsettle Cal McGregor then, though, if you offer Dyer the captaincy?
I don't think Cal McGregor will be here, so I don't think that'll matter.
And in all fairness, I don't think the captaincy would be the deciding factor on whether Ayer stayed or not. I think, look, at the end of the day, Celtic are playing in the Scottish League. There are players who want to leave, not just because they want to get out of Celtic Park. They want to move to a bigger challenge in a bigger league, and everything that it usually brings more money and that kind of thing as well. But I think a lot of them are at that age where they just want to take that next step, and we can all be critical of them, but we probably would be doing the same thing if it was any of us in our own jobs. So you're always going to look to better yourself, and if those guys are able to move on to bigger leagues.
So I just have one comment here. Sorry,
you can't criticize them for doing that.
No, you can't really, because they have to look after themselves really in their own futures when they retire, and if they want a bigger challenge, if they want to have a better experience in Europe, if they can with a B club, you can't really diss a player for doing that, really, can you?
It's a short career as well.
Yeah, it is. I just have one here. Sorry, Mark, go on.
No, I was just going to say the same thing. You can't fault players for wanting to better themselves and move to better leagues, make money. I mean, Kieran Tierney, not just Kieran Tierney, these players, they're making a kind of money that's setting up their family for generations. Not just to now. Some of the players, the wages that they're getting down in England, like their great grandkids will still be well off because of the money that they're making now. So
exactly.
You can't fault anybody for bettering themselves, no matter what walk of life you're in.
So just before we move on there from the live chat, I just want to point out there, PK's saying here, and I agree with him, still never replaced Scott Sinclair. The sticky gaffer was uncalled for. I was actually very surprised at the treatment Scott Sinclair got from the club in his last season, with us not being played, being benched every game, when the last 2 seasons he was nearly a joint top scorer, if not our top scorer. I know he had up and downs in his games, but Scott Sinclair did get you goals. And we never kind of did replace him, did we?
No, there's nobody replaced him. But see, even in a bad game, it's like James Forrest. They can be having a bad game, but they can pop up with a winner.
Yeah, exactly.
Scott Sinclair should never have been out there. We should have tried to. I think that came down to money. They should have been trying to get him to extend his contract.
But what happened? What did it ever come out? What happened there? This thing, like why he was constantly being benched? Was there something put into his new contract, an appearance fee or anything like that?
Well, he never got the new contract as such, wasn't it? It was that extension that I was talking about earlier. It was that triggered.
Yeah.
They triggered that and then never played him for.
There could have been an appearance fee, and there might have been an appearance fee or something in that, or why he wasn't being played. Something like the games or something.
It's a bit low, I thought, what they done with Sinclair.
Mhm.
Took the contract and then basically missing a year of football through, well, I assume no fault of his own behind the scenes, because he never came across as a person that it'd cause any trouble behind the scenes or that. It's a strange one altogether, that.
Right, so I think we'll move on from the Celtic rumours for tonight, and if anything ever pops up again, look, we'll go through stuff. So before we move on, we'd like to welcome to the show former professional footballer Barry Forbes, known to you guys on the forum as Iceman. Before we get talking to Barry, I just want to give you an insight into his career. He played with Dundee from the 1st of July 1999 to the 25th of August 2003. In 2003, he went on loan to Hamilton. Of course, all we know is that Barry played at Celtic Park in a 6-2 defeat to Celtic in 2003. Do we have him?
Hello, guys.
There he's there.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Welcome.
Thanks very much for having me on, guys. Appreciate it.
So, Barry, just before we just get on to a few questions for your thoughts on this season, and where do you think the club should be going next season, the way forward?
I don't think it's no surprise to say it's been a bit of a disaster, guys, isn't it, for the season? Very disappointing, and one of the biggest seasons in the club's history, certainly in my lifetime. Going for that holy grail of 10 in a row, from what's happened, it's just been so disappointing. With regards to going forward, it's going to be a very interesting summer. I had a conversation with Paul, yourself, yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be one of the biggest transitions that I can remember as a Celtic supporter in my time. With obviously we're going to get a new manager soon, but it's the players. There's going to be so many players, turnaround from the guys who won't be here due to their contracts. I do think Ayer will be away. I know you'd said, Mark, that you'd hoped, a new manager might convince him. I would be in the same boat as that, but I think the Norwegian manager's potentially just killed us, because he came out, I think, a week or two ago saying that, it's time for Chris Ayer to move. He then bombed him from the squad. I think he started the first game off on the bench, didn't get on at all, and then criticised his next performance against Turkey. So I think he'll certainly be on the go. So it's going to be a really interesting summer, guys. But, as Celtic supporters, we're always hopeful. We're always excited about what the future lies ahead. But like I say, first and foremost, we just need to get the manager in the door, whether that be Eddie Howe or whoever it may be. Like Chris had said earlier, you never trust what the press are writing. I didn't really take anything from the agent's comments yesterday about him not being close to joining a club. That didn't particularly put me off. I personally think there will be an announcement by the end of the month, simply due to the fact that that's when the season ticket renewal campaign starts. And I think the club are going to want to have some good news or certainly hopeful news to give the fans before that campaign starts. So looking forward to what the future is going to be.
I know Chris is dying to ask this question, so Chris, we'll move on to you just to get your question that you've been waiting for a past week to get out your mouth.
Shut up about this question.
Every text that came out. No, that's my question. That's my question.
Okay, guys, settle down. Barry, wonderful to have you on the show. You're very, very welcome indeed, and thank you for taking the time to come on. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, mate. Appreciate it.
It's just great to have you involved, because we're trying to build a very strong Celtic community, both in the forum and the podcast, and it's great to have you along for the ride. But there is a question that I'm keen to ask you, Barry, and it probably means more to me than anybody else, because you have walked the path as a professional footballer that I'm sure every single one of us has dreamed of walking. So just before I hit you with the question, I'll give you a very quick background to it. Now, I've been going to Celtic Park for many years. Now, I normally always sit about 20 rows back in the lower Jock Steen stand, but it wasn't until 2014 that I went on the club tour, and it was a fabulous experience. I've talked about it before in the podcast, but what impressed me the most was walking down the tunnel and out onto the side of the pitch. I swear I had to stop myself from running into the centre circle and jumping about. But anyway, even though it was empty, I was blown away by the stadium when I saw it at ground level. It looked completely different to seeing it from the stand. Now, I know that when you played at Celtic Park back in 2003, you were playing for the opposition on the day. So my question is very simple. How did it feel for you as a Celtic fan to walk down the tunnel on match day and come face to face with the crowd and the noise at the other end of it?
You know something, Chris, similar to yourself. You know, I had a season ticket as a kid with my dad and my brother. Sat in the stands for many seasons. So, you know, to be able to have that experience, without doubt, one of the best experiences of my life. That particular night. It was 7 days before Celtic played against Porto in Seville in the UEFA Cup final. So the atmosphere was absolutely incredible. The noise from the stadium that night, the fans were pretty much in party mode. You know, they had the sombreros, the beach balls, they were envisaging in 7 days' time. You know, but at the same time, that particular season, they were neck and neck with Rangers for the title. It was the year they were on the same points. They were pretty much on the same goal difference. So, they were really, the fans were up for it as much as the players were that night. But it was just a special, special moment for myself. And like I say, to be sitting in that stands as a young kid, you know, idolising some of these guys growing up as the years passed, to then be able to step out onto the pitch in front of 60-odd thousand supporters and rub shoulders with, you know, the guys that I cheered on and supported. It was a real special moment, but at the same time, I had a job to do. So, you know, the result that night, it finished 6-2 to Celtic, you know, which obviously wasn't what I'd wanted personally, but, you know, a real special moment for me.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm just glad that you didn't answer that question with, yeah, it was all right. But and just finally, and a very, very simple question, just give me one name. You played for, I think it was, you played, I think you came on, 55th or 56th minute or something like that?
55th minute.
55th minute. So...
We've got to start bringing 55s into things now.
So for the time that you were on the pitch, Barry, what one Celtic player stood out to you?
Well, you know what, I'll tell you what, there was one. There was one in particular. Now, obviously that Celtic team was just littered with... It was one of the best Celtic teams that I can remember. I think in the midfield that day it was Petrov, Lennon, Lambert, Thompson and Agat. Larsson was up front. He scored that day with Maloney. But the one person that really stuck out for me, and it might come as a slight surprise, it was Neil Lennon. It was Neil Lennon. You know something? He just had... He covered just about every blade of grass that night. And as you can imagine, a Dundee against Celtic at Celtic Park, when, you know, Celtic are going for the league, they're riding high. They had the lion's share of possession, you know, 70+%, I'd imagine. But any time they never had it, you know, any time we managed to get possession, he was the one that was at the forefront trying to get the ball back for them. He was covering every blade of grass. Certainly every time I managed to get a touch of the ball, which wasn't that often that night, he was within 5-10 yards, you know, really trying to get that ball back. So I would say that particular night, Lennon was the one. Lennon was the guy that stuck out for me. And, you know, he doesn't really get a great deal of credit in that team, given the talent that was there and, you know, the showmen like Moravcik, you know, the goals that Henrik scored, Sutton, Hartson, you know, Petrov. You know, he's the one that sort of fades into the background sometimes. But certainly that night, he was the one that really stuck out for me as just a sheer desire. You know, Celtic, I think at one point they were 6-1 up, but he was still so determined to get the ball back and, you know, get them back on the front foot, going for more goals. And, you know, I think that was a testament to his character. But I would say, Chris, Lennon was the one that particular night that stuck out for me.
Wonderful. That's a fabulous... You know, Barry, not only did you answer the question, but you gave a fantastic explanation of why you named him. So thank you. Listen, guys, I can rest easy for the night now. I'm just delighted that Barry has given us that insight to actually playing at Celtic Park, because to me, that's my... You know, I've almost lived my dream through you there, Barry. So thank you very much for that.
I think we all have, Chris, we all have there. So I think by just moving on there, we as you said there, we talked yesterday, and you talked about, to me, you talked about Lennon as well yesterday, and we were saying like that Lennon gave his life to Celtic realistically, and that every Celtic fan should remember Neil Lennon for what he did for the club, not just for this season. You know, Neil Lennon is a legend, and just hopefully that this season doesn't damage what he actually did for the club. You know?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, obviously, Neil Lennon was a fantastic player for the club. You know, he was very successful as a player, won many trophies, and he had to go through a hell of a lot. You know, it would have been easy for a lesser character to turn away and decide, you know, it's not worth it. It's not worth putting my family through this. You know, getting bullets through the door. You know, getting attacked in a dugout. You know, it would have been easy for Lennon to walk away, but he never. And that was because his love for the football club. You know, he's a Celtic supporter, just like the rest of us, as much as anybody. And, you know, this season has been disappointing, you know, and I said yesterday, I just hope that, you know, in years to come, we can remember Neil Lennon for all the good that he achieved as a player and as a manager, and not for what's happened this season. And I certainly think he deserves that. And hopefully, you know, time's a great healer, and in a few years' time, we can remember Neil Lennon for what he achieved as a player and a manager.
Exactly. So moving on from that match, was it 2 weeks later you were actually in the stadium watching the St. Johnstone's game when Harold Blackback got the final goal against St. Johnstone that we won the league. So that just shows commitment that you're Celtic. That was a different year. I must admit, I was still a youngster. Yeah, I was still a youngster. But you know, that kind of just goes back to the fact that, you know, I'm sitting in the stands and watching these guys playing, idolising them, and then, you know, like I said earlier, to get the opportunity to rub shoulders and actually go and share a field with them. You know, it was a special moment for me and for my family. You know, I come from a big Celtic supporting family, so, you know, it was a great moment for me. So that team, they had the likes of Larson, Hartson, Sutton, Alan Thompson, Lennon, Maracek, big players, and Boba Balde. Can Celtic compete to bring these players like that into the club, big name players, or do you think those days are gone, Chris, financially for the club?
So was that for me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
So yeah, are you asking Barry or me?
No, Barry. Sorry, Barry. Sorry.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. You know, I think, to be honest, with regards to bringing in bigger name players, I can't see. You know, I think the financial gap's just too big now. You know, I think back then Celtic were able to sort of compete. You know, we managed to sign Chris Sutton from Chelsea, you know, for £6 million.
Exactly.
His previous fee from Blackburn to Chelsea was 10. You know, and we were able to compete wage-wise. You know, I think like Henrik Larsson, I think, you know, he was on about £38,000 a week. You know, and I think at the time Roy Keane was the highest-paid British player on £50,000. So the gap wasn't that big back then. The gap is just huge now. So, you know, I can't see us going out and signing players, but, you know, like people have commented on tonight, I don't see why we can't go and get some decent players. You don't have to sometimes fork out big fees to get players. You know, there's players that will be out of contract that we could potentially offer a decent wage to. And we're still a massive club. You know, we're still a pool that, you know, whilst the Scottish League may get its critics and so on and so forth, we are still a big club. We are still a big club that players will want to come and play for.
Exactly. So, with the problems this season, myself, Chris and Mark have been talking about it there for the last podcast, is our youth academy. There seems to be no pathway for them to break into the first team, and a lot of young players are actually leaving recently. So, when you were a young player at Dundee, what was kind of given to you as your development as a player and to make your breakthrough into the first team, Barry?
Yeah, well, I think like back then, you know, in my youth days, you know, if you were doing well, you know, and I was fortunate enough to play in a pretty decent Dundee youth team. You know, the first year we reached the cup final. You know, we lost to Celtic in the cup final, but along the way we knocked out Rangers, we knocked out Hearts. So if you were developing well, you were right in with the first team in terms of training. Now you weren't okay. You might not have made the squad, but you were right in the mix, and to be honest, you kind of felt a part of the team. And I think, you know, that's what needs to happen. The youth development in Celtic is going to be huge for us. I really think it's an area that we need to put a proper focus on, because, I think going forward, there is issues with it just now. We're losing players. I think Barry Hepburn and Liam Morrison both away to Bayern Munich. There's been guys going to Man City. We're losing players right, left, and centre. And these guys, they're clearly thinking to themselves, I don't see a pathway to the Celtic first team, so I'm going to try elsewhere. I really think that we have to have a massive focus on it, and probably more so now with the whole Brexit thing, because Celtic's model at the minute, as we all know, is it's going into Europe and it's signing players, young players from European leagues that have been undiscovered, nurturing them, developing them and selling them on for big profits. We're not going to have that option going forward, because these players will not have, be allowed visas into the country. So we really need to be looking at youth development. And I think whoever comes in, the director of football, I think that's going to be a massive part of Celtic's, plan going forward, is to develop this youth. And like you say, Paul, these young kids, they need to be able to see a way of how they're going to get into the Celtic first team. Because right now, I don't think it's there. And that's the reason that we're losing a lot of talent to some of Europe's biggest clubs. And that doesn't sit well with me.
Exactly.
Barry, would you say that they're... Sorry, Paul. Would you say that their path to the first team is blocked because of the structure of the club and not their actual individual ability?
I would say that that's probably the case, Chris. I think it has to be, like I said, it's not like we're losing players at 18, 19 that have had, a taste of first team football, not getting maybe the minutes that they wanted and have decided to move on to other clubs. These are kids at 16-year-old. I think
16-year-old, 16.
The two lads who have gone to Bayern Munich, they're both 16-year-olds. So it's funny, they talk about Fergal Harkin being, the pathways manager for Man City. I don't think Celtic have a pathway for the youth team. I have to laugh sometimes when I hear, players talk about, our supporters certainly talk about, Callum McGregor and, James Forrest, youth players who broke through. I think James Forrest's 30-year-old. And Callum McGregor's not too far behind him. Now, I know there's been like Kieran Tierney, and you could probably look at Mikey Johnson and now Stephen Welsh. There needs to be more. There needs to be more kids coming in. Celtic need to get back on to a field whereby they're developing these young players, and these players are coming into the first team and staking a claim, because just now it doesn't happen too often. And like I say, with the money gap, we don't have the finances to go out and sign, top European players. We really need to have a big focus on, in my opinion, we need to have a big focus on the youth team. And going forward, like I say, whoever gets the director of football job, I think that's going to be a massive thing for them.
Exactly, like we send out like the young lad Luke O'Connell. He's actually gone out to the Queen of the South. Is it the Queen's Park? Sorry, Queen's Park.
Yeah.
He actually has 3 assists, I think 2 goals in 3 games or something like that, and he's two man the match performance. Sure, because like when he comes in next season, he should be breaking into this first team, because when I was talking to you yesterday, he said he played in a pre-season friendly against Tibbs, and his passing was absolutely amazing. You said that he's a vision of the game, for such a young lad.
Yeah, I mean, I watched that game that we spoke about, Paul, as a pre-season friendly against Hibs at Celtic Park, and Connell played in the centre of the park, and he had a fantastic game, but he's never been seen since, so obviously it's been decided, whether it be himself that's gone to, the club and said, I want to get out and play first team football, because there's no reserve games just now. There's no sort of even friendlies being played. These guys are just coming in. These kids, they're training Monday to Friday, and they're not really getting any game time.
Barry,
I think a big advantage for Celtic is. Sorry, Mark, go on.
Just what you're talking about there, Barry. Do you think? What was it you said there about getting into the first team? I've lost it now. Forget it.
It's about the pathway, mate. No.
Oh, you said something. I thought it came into my head. I've totally lost it. It's all right. On you go. What you were talking about.
Would you, Barry? Would you say that Neil Lennon was an obstacle to a lot of the young players coming through? Because on the last podcast we chatted, and I had certainly given, and it was just my view at the time, is that these young lads coming into the development squad, they're like any bunch of young lads. They talk to each other. Are they saying to young lads coming in, listen, you're not going to get a chance. He doesn't give anybody a chance at all.
I don't think they didn't trust him, Chris. Do you think like that? He didn't trust.
Yeah.
He stuck with the same 11 players that he tried and trusted. Like,
well, exactly. Yeah.
Not give these lads a chance.
And the point I'd made at that time was that I felt perhaps it was actually down to Lennon's lack of confidence in his own position, as much as actually a lack of confidence in the ability of the young lads, feeling that if I bring a couple of young lads in, or even one, and if he has a nightmare of a game, I'm going to be blamed. And I really don't feel comfortable taking that stick. Barry, do you think there's any truth in that, or is that the wrong way to look at it?
I don't know, to be honest, because I'd be less likely to point the finger at Neil Lennon, because look at the managers before him. There's been Brendan Rodgers, Ronnie Dyla, Neil Lennon before that. How many youth players have come through the system? How many players have broke in to the team? Neil Lennon gave James Forrest his debut as, I think, a 19 or 20-year-old in his first stint as manager. Mm-hmm. And, beyond maybe Callum McGregor, who I think came in under Ronnie Dyla, there's not been sort of any, Mikey Johnson's had a handful of games, I'd be less likely to point the finger at Neil Lennon. Listen, I think I had a conversation with Paul yesterday about Neil Lennon, and, I'm certainly not going to bash the guy, but I feel Neil Lennon's sort of qualities as a manager, when it comes to the tactical side of things and development, I think personally they're limited. And I think when you listen to players who have played under him in the past, they talk about how he never really spoke about tactics, he never really did shape during training. He was more of a motivator. So, from that point of view, that could potentially hinder developing young players, because it's maybe not his forte to do that. But I think, if you look back on previous managers that we've had in the last sort of 10 to 15 years, I don't see many youth players coming through that. So I would suggest it's more to do with the structure, the youth development structure of the club that needs looked at, as opposed to the individual managers.
Now, prior to this season, though, Barry, a lot of people would have claimed that John Kennedy was the backbone of Celtic. But because this season has been so poor, a lot of fans, certainly from what I've seen, they haven't just been blaming Neil Lennon, they've been blaming John Kennedy every bit as much. And then in the last few games when he has been in control, again, a lot of fans saying, oh, it's just the same as before, get Kennedy out. It seems like half the fan base want John Kennedy out as well. Whereas, like I say, prior to this season, he was considered as Mr. Celtic, the backbone of the whole training structure, and he was so good that Rodgers wanted to take him to Leicester as well, but he said no, he wouldn't go. There's even talk that he turned down the Hibs job. Do you think this season has damaged John Kennedy's position at the club?
Personally, I think with John Kennedy, listen, I don't think there's any doubt he has coaching abilities, and when you speak to players that have maybe played or are being coached by him, you listen to what Brendan Rodgers has to say about him. He's clearly a good coach. I think the issue is, a lot of the conception is that John Kennedy is a defensive coach, and when Celtic lose, so many goals at set pieces, and they never seem to learn their lesson game after game, a lot of people point the finger at John Kennedy and say, well, John Kennedy was a centre half. Why is he not sorted this out? It's not the case. John Kennedy's not he's a football coach. He's not a defensive coach. What I personally feel, Chris, and I had this conversation with Paul yesterday, I think it's time for John Kennedy to go from Celtic, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way or a finger pointing way. I think, for his own development, I think he needs to go and take a team. He needs to go and get his own football club, manage a football club, put his stamp on things and kind of cut his teeth in management, because he's been a coach now at Celtic for a number of years, so I think the longer he stays at the club, it might sort of stagnate his coaching development. So I think, it is time for John Kennedy to move on and try his hand at management and go and prove, because I think there was a consensus at one point that he was the natural successor to Neil Lennon, before things went pear-shaped. People were talking about he would step in. I don't buy into that. I think you need to sort of go and earn your rights to get the Celtic manager job. So I think me personally, I think John Kennedy should go into management, put a stamp on a team, develop a team, earn the plaudits or whatever it may be. And then you never know, further down the line, he might very well end up as a Celtic manager. But for me, John Kennedy, I think he should be moving on this summer. And whoever gets the manager's job at Celtic should look to be bringing their own staff.
Yeah.
Just going back there.
How do you feel about Scott Brown leaving Barry?
Personally, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed that Scott Brown's left. I know, again, he's taken a lot of flack this season. Every player, you can point the finger at every player for what's happened this season. But I just feel, okay, his legs aren't there anymore. I think he's 35. I don't know if he's 36 this summer. I don't know. Or he's just turning 35. I'm not sure. There's no doubt, his legs aren't what they used to be. But I still think he can make a contribution to the team. I really do. And I think, whilst it wasn't a great performance against Rangers a few weeks back, he was voted man of the match. He controls games, but I don't feel Celtic use him the way he should be used. Celtic, under Neil Lennon in the diamond formation, what have you, they seem to put the play through Scott Brown. He was the first, the defence would pass it to Brown and Brown would control. That's not for me. That's not Scott Brown's strengths. Scott Brown's strengths is snapping, getting the ball back, getting in players' faces. For me, Callum McGregor should have been the guy that was getting the ball and controlling the midfield. So I think, they were using Scott Brown not the way he should have been used this season. And I think, personally, he's played more minutes than he probably should have had. It's probably, held Sorrow back a little bit. Sorrow came in. He got good minutes round about, the Christmas time. He was doing well. And then all of a sudden, Brown was back in the team. I think he should have been used sparingly. But, I'm a bit disappointed because I feel he could have had another season. He's clearly a good influence around the dressing room. He's very well respected. His attitude, when you listen to people speak about his attitude in training, he seems to be non-stop. He's all going. So I'm a bit disappointed. I didn't see it coming, but you know what? Part of me as well takes my hat off to the guy because clearly he's looking at his future in terms of developing himself as a coach. Now he's going as Stephen Glass's assistant up at Aberdeen, so he's looking at how he can develop himself as a coach. He's taken that step, so kind of tying that in with John Kennedy, I think he should be doing the same. But yeah, from a personal point of view, guys, I'm slightly disappointed that Brown has decided to move on. But at the same time, I do respect him for what he's doing.
Yeah. Well, maybe he'll be back someday. Back to you there, Paul.
So just moving on there with Barry, with all the players supposedly leaving and not negotiating their contracts and unset in the dressing room. Have you ever been in the dressing room with a player unsettled or a player even in an unsettled dressing room?
Well, I have, yeah. At the time, in my Dundee days, there was, I don't know how much you guys remember, that we got an Italian manager, a guy called Ivano Benetti.
Yeah, Benetti.
Ivano Benetti came in, and what followed him was an influx of foreign players. Some good, some not so good, but there was a bit of a bust up. I was just a young sort of kid at the time. I remember there being a bit of a bust up at training, and the players involved were pretty much ostracised. They were banished from first team, everything to do with the first team. They got their own training facilities. So obviously it's never good. It's never good when there's a divide in the changing room. Obviously that's never, or as far as we're aware, and that's not been the case at Celtic. As the guys touched on earlier, there is players who want to be, but I mean that's just natural. That's just natural. That is the Celtic model, as I kind of touched on earlier. We went and signed guys like Christopher Ayer, Hudson Edward, Christie as a young kid, and Cham. These guys, that's the model of Celtic. We go in, we sign these players, we give them a platform to play on. They're competing for trophies. They're playing on the European stage, and as a result, if they do well, teams are going to notice them. So it's only natural that these players are going to want to move on to bigger leagues, earn bigger wages. It's just the way football is, and I think it was interesting. Dermot Desmond said in his statement, going back a couple of weeks, he was prepared for this to happen. That was a consequence of him holding on to his players and in the quest for 10 in a row, he decided that they weren't going to be selling Edward or Christie or Ayer or he was going to keep his squad together. But as a result, he was very well aware that next summer, as in this one coming, that there was going to be a huge transition. So hopefully he's prepared for that, and I don't know whether that means there's going to be money there to spend in the summer. I'd imagine there would be, but like I say, he touched on it himself with regards to this summer was always going to be a transition as a consequence of holding on to your Edwards and Ayers, etc.
Can I cut in here now, Paul?
Yeah.
That's the question I was going to ask earlier. An alert popped up, and I thought the stream had died. That's what the question in my head. Barry, back to about players going out on loan. Did you not think that it's part of their learning curve? See, when you left Dundee to go to Hamilton, did they tell you, go and spend a season at Hamilton, come back, and you'll be ready for our first team?
You know what, Mark? It was the other way about, mate. It was the other way about because I was fortunate enough to break into the first team at Dundee, and like I said, I only played a handful of games. It was like 15 games that I'd played, but I was never consistently involved. I was never sort of playing week in, week out. And as a result, once I'd had that sort of taste of first team football, when I wasn't playing every week, I wanted to go out and get it. So it was myself that went to the manager. It was Jim Duffy at the time. And I said, I'm not playing as much as I want to. Would it be possible for me to go on loan? And he agreed. And like you say, Mark, I think it's a great part of a player's development, So, when I went on loan to Hamilton, I absolutely loved it. I mean, these were guys, I'd gone from a changing room that had, big players in it. You're looking at the time at the Dundee changing room, there was Ravanelli that was in that team.
Speroni from Crystal Palace was in goal then as well.
Speroni was in the goal, Skpe, Georgi Namzadze, I went from, sharing a changing room with these guys to going in with guys who, were part-time, desperate to win games of football, desperate to get promotion,
a normal working environment, a good
normal
spirit, all the banter and the things that go with that.
Absolutely brilliant, Matty. And the thing was as well, it was an eye-opener because, these guys, they relied on, the small win bonuses because that could have helped, I don't know, buy them a motor. It could have helped, get their wife a kitchen, pay their rent, It was a high up, but I absolutely loved it. I embraced it. I loved my time at Hamilton.
Was that the old Douglas Park?
It was a new Douglas Park, mate. It was a new one. It was grass at the time, right enough. It wasn't the AstroTurf, but that was me, and I believe it's you're going in against guys that are not scared to kick you. That they're there to put you up in the air. It really helps you develop physically as much as it does mentally. So
that's why I think it should be part. That's what I'm saying about that. Look, O'Connell. Hopefully, he's out there learning. David Beckham went on loan to Preston North End.
Callum McGregor went to North County, didn't he?
To me, it should be. If players are at a certain level go into the first team, but it should be a pity any player to go a division below them or that, and the learning curve for their young player, and that should be like the final year of what you call an old-fashioned apprenticeship. Get down, get toughened up, get kicked up and down the park, and learn about the old dirty style of football. At that time, you'll either be ready for Celtic or you'll be ready to play for somebody at a decent enough level.
Absolutely. Something. It's a real eye opener, and you learn a lot more. Like I personally found, and I'm sure anybody that does go out and learn, you learn a lot more from going and playing in competitive senior football than you would do from a reserve match or an under-21 game or your friendlies that you have at Lennoxtown. You would learn a lot more than going and cutting your teeth down in these lower leagues. Going up against guys that sort of tough guys, hard men. Guys that are desperate to win games of football. And like you say, it's a real eye-opener. And by the time you've gone down there, and if you're success, it makes you appreciate what you've got when you're back at the club, that you play for. But I agree with you, Mark, 100%. For me, any of the young Celtic players that, aren't quite at the level that they're making the first-team squad, they need to go and cut their teeth, in the Championship or even League One. I think Luke O'Connell, he seems to have embraced it.
Yeah.
Paul and I spoke about it yesterday. He's gone in there and he's shown it, by what I've heard and the reports that I've read about him, he's shown a terrific attitude at Queen's Park. He's going in there and he's shown what they can do. He's shown what he can do. I think he's had 3 appearances, 3 man of the matches, a goal and 2 assists. So he's really embracing the opportunity to go and play on loan at a senior club. And good luck to him. And I think more players should be doing the same, or Celtic should be certainly looking to send some of these guys out. I think Ewan Henderson's just went to Dunfermline recently as well. These are good opportunities for these guys to go and get minutes at senior level, and it'll set them in good stead for hopefully coming back in the summer and having a good go for the new manager at Celtic.
I'd mentioned there, Barry, just in the rumours section at the beginning. I don't know if you heard it or not, but that young Norwegian lad we have, young Leo Hjeld, who's up with the Staggies at the minute with Yogi, seems to be getting a really, really good reviews. Do you know anything about him at all?
I don't know too much about him in terms of probably what the Knicks fans, but probably like a lot of Celtic fans, I always take a keen interest on the youths. Always like to see who's going to be coming through and who's got an opportunity. So I think it was John Hughes that went out and requested. He actually wanted Leo Hjeld to come in, and certainly he made a big impression early doors, because I think John Hughes was talking him up very well and really suggesting that he could come in the summer and certainly do a job at centre half. But like I say, a good opportunity for this guy to go and he'll be playing at a good level. He's played at a good level. I think he actually got good raps against Rangers. Now I think they took a bit of a doing that day. I think they lost 6-0 or so. But John Hughes was very complimentary of Hjeld in that particular game. So like as mentioned in there, a good opportunity for these guys to go out and experience senior football. They're not getting the minutes at Celtic at this moment in time, so a good opportunity to go out. But you've got to impress in these games as well. You've got to impress the manager, and there's no doubt that whoever the manager may be, John Hughes, I'm sure, would be keen to give a report on Hjeld. And like I say, I think it speaks volumes for the guy that he's now been linked with a move to Southampton, is it?
Yeah, Southampton.
So he must be doing something right out there. But these are guys that we really need to be hopefully given an opportunity to, if the opportunity arises.
So I do think, like myself and Mark talked about this in the first podcast we did, and we talked about cold teams that we have here in Ireland. We have Shamrock Rovers have a cold team down here, and I know it's been refused a lot of times up in Scotland, but that would be a great benefit to Scottish football and development of not just foreign players but Scottish players as well, to have a Celtic and Rangers cold teams in the lower divisions to help these youngsters play, you say, this competitive football that's happening,
Well, that is being proposed, isn't it?
It's being refused again.
Was it refused?
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Something I see both good and bad, to the coach teams, because, to have them in the lower Scottish League, I understand, there's potential there to be a good option to develop these players. But I personally would I would rather see these, rather than the Colt team itself be formed as a team in the lower league, I'd rather see the players, if they're not getting the opportunity at Celtic, to actually go out and play for your Dumbartons, your Alloas, your Dunfermlines, to actually experience what it's like in those teams. To have a guy be willing to give you a bollocking if you make a mistake, effectively, affecting their win bonus or that. I think it's a massive learning experience. So, the Colt teams, do I think it would be a good idea to have them in the lower league? Personally, I would rather see the younger players go out and actually experience senior football at the lower league Scottish clubs than I would to see a Colt team, a Celtic or a Rangers Colt team in the lower ebbs at the Scottish Football League. I think it's better for the learning curve for these guys to go and actually play in your like I say, your Dumbartons or your Queen's
they're going
Parks.
to take it for a different manager as well and see different types what managers play and what a manager's different view would have in that player than his own kind of team as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, sometimes maybe even learn a different side to your game. a game where you might have to roll the sleeves up and get stuck in. I think in the sort of youth development, there's a lot of really good football played. But what you probably don't see is games where you're away to East Stirling on a cold Wednesday night, where you really have to dig deep and roll the sleeves up and really work hard for your win. I think that's a massive part of a young player's learning curve. And like I say, I certainly learned that when I moved from Dundee to Hamilton, I certainly learned a different side to my game that I never experienced when I was at Dundee. And me personally, I'd rather see some of the Celtic youngsters go out and learn that side of the game rather than maybe to see a Colt team in the lower divisions. But
it's not a Colt team's not really competitive then either, Barry. So it's not really they're not going to get promoted. They're going to stay in that division all the time.
That's it. Yeah,
there's no really benefit to you then either, is there?
For me, it's just basically a Celtic Colt team playing against lower leagues opposition. And whilst it will be competitive in terms of these teams are desperate to win and desperate to go up against your Celtics and Rangers, like I say, me personally, I'd rather see these young guys going out and getting good experience within a dressing room, playing, like you said, playing for a different manager and really learning a different side to the game that I feel would be beneficial to them for when they came back to the football club.
Exactly. That is actually a very, very good point, Barry. Yes, it's about because it doesn't matter whether it's in England, Scotland, the Republic of Ireland or Northern Ireland, you get so many hard men playing in the lower leagues, don't you? They're maybe lacking a bit in talent. That's why they're in the lower leagues, but they're good, honest to goodness, tough, hard players. And to get those young lads in the mix with them in training and playing with them, as opposed to playing against them as part of their own little cocoon. And I think that's actually a very clever inside sort of look at it, and that comes from someone like you with your experience, because I think a lot of us would have said beforehand, yes, it would be a terrific thing if we could get, as Paul mentioned there, a cult team or a junior team to go into the second division or whatever. But I absolutely agree with what you said, and I'd never thought of it that way. Get those young lads in and around those guys, working with them every day, and that's when basically the game will either make them or break them and show them how good they are.
Absolutely, and it's certainly, trust me, it certainly toughens you up. Like you say, you're going in and you're playing against these tough, honest, players, but you're also playing with them. Your teammates are also tough, honest
it's going
guys.
to tough you up in the training session.
Exactly. And like I said, they're not slow to miss you if you make an error or they feel that you're not pulling your weight, and it does develop you. It toughens you up both mentally and physically. And like I say, guys, I just feel that I don't know if it's maybe an old-fashioned mindset, but I feel it worked well for me, and I've seen it working well for other people. And that's the way I would be looking to do. I'd be looking to get some of these young kids in and around, honest senior teams, and really learning and developing a different side to their game. And it'll only stand them in good stead for when they do come back and hopefully make an impact for Celtic.
So, just looking there, Barry, give us a rundown on contract negotiations between the player and the agent, and is it stressful for you to get that deal over the line, or what kind of goes on behind the scenes there?
So, well,
Barry,
something.
Just get your dad.
At the time, I think football was a slightly simpler time back then, if I'm honest. But to answer your question, I did have an agent. My first contract, it was a YTS contract, so there's nothing into it. It's a 2-year youth training scheme contract. You're in the youth development team. Now within that, I then got a 1-year professional contract about 6 months into my YTS. So there is no negotiations. It was just very much a case of, this is what we're going to offer you. Great if you sign it. If you didn't, you're not coming with us. Simple as that. But when I did get one sort of bigger or longer contract at Dundee. I made my first team debut. I was in the final year of my contract, and I made my first team debut, ironically, against Hamilton. It was for Dundee. It was a League Cup match. And that very same week, Dundee offered me a 4-year contract after that game. Now, I did have an agent at the time. So basically, the course of action was the Dundee director of football came to me to say, like, would like to offer you a contract, and they asked me if I had an agent, which I did. So at the time, he went in and negotiated's probably not the right word. He went in and spoke to the club, and he came out and he basically just said to me, look, these are the terms. I've offered you a 4-year contract. This is the money that they'd be looking to offer you. He then said, I did ask him if it was negotiable, and they told me no, it wasn't. So that was it. But to be honest with you, I was a young kid at the time. I'd only made one senior appearance and had been offered a 4-year contract. So I wasn't thinking about money or anything like that. I was just delighted that, potentially for the next... Yeah, that's what it was about, Mark. I had an opportunity now for the next 4 years to go and establish myself at the football club. So, the money thing was never an issue. And like I say, in terms of negotiating, there was no negotiating. Maybe a player that's maybe well established, that's maybe played, 150 games for a football club, they maybe have, the negotiating power to go and say, well, actually, no, I'm wanting X, you're offering me this, but I'm wanting more. I didn't even give it a second thought. As soon as my agent came back and said,
your love for the game, but
I just wanted to play.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I was 20-year-old when I got offered that contract. It was a case of give me a pen, I'll sign it straight away. And my thought process was, I've got 4 years now to go and sort of establish myself at this football club and take it from there. Unfortunately, it didn't last 4 years because the club went into administration 2 years into that, and at that point, I lost my job, and my contract was terminated.
Yeah. By the sounds of that, Barry, though, if they had brought you in to discuss that 4-year contract, your level of enthusiasm, as you've just explained so well, if they had asked you to pay them 50 quid to give you a week to give you a 4-year contract, you might have said yes, would you?
If I'd have paid them 50 quid, I'd been running at a loss, because I don't think I was on much more than that, to be perfectly honest with you. But yeah, like I say, I was in the last year of my contract, so at that point it was make or break for me. I was very well aware that if I don't do something this year, if it doesn't happen for me, and I've not broken the first team, that'll be me away. I was very well aware of that. So, like I say, to get offered a 4-year contract after my very first appearance for the football club, I couldn't sign it quick enough. It was simple as that. Yeah. But I think, like I say, it was a bit simpler back then, because now when it's not just agency here, it seems to be teams of agents. There's an entourage of people, players, financial advisors. Oh, jeez.
They don't do any work to just roll in the money. They'll be off folk.
So that's that, and there's that many people involved. It's moved from players not having agents to players having one agent. And now some players have got 2 and 3 agents and financial advisors, and it just seems a messy process. And I don't envy the process now.
There was a meeting the other week between all the Premier League clubs, see about these Champions League changes and that. There was a meeting between all the Premier League clubs. The behaviour of 2 agents was one of the top agendas. I'm not going to mention who the 2 agents are, but the behaviour and the influence they're having in the game was one of the agendas on that meeting.
Yeah.
So the power that some of these guys have got in the game is just unbelievable.
It's ridiculous, because when you're going to buy a player now, like, it's not just the player's fee you're paying for. Like, you could be paying at least 10 million, 20 million there for an agent's fee now, realistically, before you even buy the player. That could be the agent's fee, realistically, before you go to buy.
Top agents are telling clubs, I want this money before you'll get any chance of signing my player.
Yeah.
Talk about transfer fees or anything now.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Ruining
it. Something, back there's certain managers that are okay, they're probably a bit old school managers now, to be perfectly honest. They would not sign players that had agents because they refused to deal with them. I've listened to podcasts recently about a well-known Scottish manager, and he refused to deal with any player or sign any player if he had to deal with an agent. And that's, these guys have been in the game a long time, and they can see the negative influence that these guys have. But I fully agree. Agents are ruining the game now. The money they're making is disgusting.
Oh, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And for me, these agents, you're an 18-year-old there and you're 19, and you're getting nearly 60 to 80,000 euro. I speak euro per pound, we say, a week. That's ridiculous money for an issue. And no wonder some of them are going off the walls the way they carry on. We have all this money in their bank account every week. You know, there should be kind of a cap, really, on a youth player.
If you look at one of the shocking experiences that we had, with a young player having his head turned, was young Islam Feruz when he left and went to Chelsea. Apparently, his agent was absolute. He was 99.99% of the reason why the lad went. Now it turns out, well, he clearly had attitude issues as well, because they followed him everywhere he went. But a young player like that had natural obvious ability had been hyped up so much, obviously, by an agent. You can get this and you can get that, but it's not, particularly a young lad like that, it's not just a case of we can get you X pounds a week. It's like we can guarantee that your family are going to be set up as well.
Yeah, exactly.
The family, they make promises to the family. We'll buy your mum a big fancy house. It's the money involved. That's the level that we're at. Then a young kid's mum. I mean, if you're a young boy, they're like Barry. If somebody turned around and said to you, Barry, look, we want to sign for, come and sign for Tier 1, come and sign for Rangers, Barry. We'll give you back then $5,000 a week and we'll buy your mum £100,000 house. Would you have done it?
Right, okay, Matt. You just said the football club there, because it's funny, because obviously when I was at Dundee, I was a well known within the changing room, etc. I was a Celtic fan, and I used to get asked that. Question. Would you ever sign for Rangers? If they offered you $20,000 a week, you'd tell me you'd turn that down. Now my answer was, I would 100% turn that down, for the simple. And the reason I used to give was, if I was good enough to earn $20,000 a week at Rangers, I would be good enough to earn the same amount at a Cardiff City or a Wigan Athletic at the time. I just could not bring myself.
Exactly.
I could, just that club, Mark. Just that club. I could not bring myself to sign for that football club.
Fair
but I get.
Would the £100,000 house for your mum have swayed your decision towards any other team then?
100%. As a young kid, to be able to offer your parents who have done everything for you, who have driven you to where you needed to go as a young kid, to football grounds and to when you were playing Sunday boys football, to be able to give them something back, of course you would. You wouldn't hesitate. You wouldn't hesitate to do that. So it's a clever ploy, especially for the younger, the really sort of young players, because, like I say, I'm kind of out of touch with youth football now, but I'd imagine every youth player has an agent. Like I say, I never had one as a youth. It was more as time went on with me that I did get an agent. But I'd imagine that would be one of the first things young players do now, is get them, or even agents going in and trying to sell themselves to young players. So if you're turning around to a young player and saying, listen, if you come with my agency company, we'll give you $100,000 and we'll give your parents a house. It's a no-brainer, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's such an incentive.
It's actually going to persuade a young player, really, isn't it? Yeah, it's really going to turn a young player's head. Like, geez, if I can get my parents a house here, and get extra money for my family in the future. As a young player, you're going to be thinking, of course I'm going to go.
I mean, it's just like, imagine your boss. Imagine you were, it's any walk of life. If you were an apprentice engineer, if your boss turned around and says to you, by the way, how would you feel if you were able to give your mum and dad a house? Like I say, any walk of life, you would snap that up, to be able to do that for your parents. So, I mean, that's the way agents are these days. And like I say, it's not a good thing in football.
Just before we move on, there, myself, Chris and Mark, they were talking about the refereeing in Scotland this year. Not just this year, the last couple of seasons. Was the refereeing kind of poor back when you were playing, like these decisions being missed, like clear-cut penalties not being given, and would you be in favour of VAR coming up to Scotland, or not in favour of VAR coming to Scotland?
Well, I mean, I think, to answer your first question, I don't think anything's been as blatant as us this season. And something, I'll be perfectly honest, I've never been one to sort of bash referees. I've always looked sort of more in-house. If Celtic haven't won a game of football, I've never really been one to sort of look at the refereeing performance. I've instead tried to sort of look at where the team went wrong, or whether it be tactics. But I think it's difficult to get away from the blatant, obvious decisions that have, got the other side, the team for the other side, the City, for them to have gone a whole season without a sending off, without a penalty awarded. I don't think that's ever happened in any season. But, probably to contradict it, I'm not a big fan of VAR. I personally wouldn't like to see it coming into Scotland. These marginal offside decisions.
Yeah, we
that
talked
you see
about that last night, didn't we?
Week out.
Yeah.
Oh, it just does my head in. You're talking millimetres, to see that. But listen, I think it's positive for certain aspects of the game. So things like maybe a penalty being awarded or not. Yeah, I like that idea. Has the ball crossed the line or not? Yeah, I like that. But to bring it in for, offside decisions, and I've read recently they're looking at, corners and throw-ins. I mean, games are going to end up...
If the legs come up off the floor, I heard that as well, Barry. Yeah, if the legs come up off the floor.
Games are going to end up lasting 2 and 3 hours now if you're going to go to VAR for a corner or a throw-in. So yeah, I mean, personally, I wouldn't like to see it in Scotland, and I know that probably goes against what I'm saying with regards to, the multiple decisions that have gone in favour of Rangers this season, but no, you know what, not for me.
I think it would be welcome in Scotland if it was run right. See if it was the referee going out to the pitch side and the referee's looking back on a monitor to make the decision. That's how it was intended to be.
I just hope we don't get Mike Dean and the fella Bobby Manley doing the VAR.
See if you're passing it up to people sitting up in an office somewhere to go over every single angle of it. That wasn't the way that FIFA tried to bring VAR in. If you remember back to the World Cup in Russia, the referee went over and looked at the monitor. He watched it again for all the different angles available. I mean, it was still his decision, although he's seen it for every angle. Because all it takes again is, see if we bring it in up here the way the English are using it, it's just backing up the dodgy decisions. The referees, we've looked at it, or the referee said that, and the VAR decisions backed him up.
Mm-hmm.
There's always something there that can be interfered with.
But
just wants to see something again. I don't see anything wrong with that.
What I kind of saw in it though in the Premier League, is that no one kind of contradict the other. You know what I mean? If the ref made a decision, VAR are going to review that. They're more than likely go to the ref, and then it's the exact same around. Then if VAR reviewing decision, the referee will actually go the same as VAR. There's no one saying no, I got that wrong.
But it's VAR's overruling the referee.
Yeah.
The referee just saying, look, I didn't see that clear. I'm going to go here and look at it for a different angle, and then I'll decide.
Yeah, and even a celebration,
the game is that the referee's decision is final.
Exactly.
There's no VAR's making the decision.
I mean, I think, not that I really want to speak about other sports, but when you look, other sports get it right. Other sports can use this technology.
Look at the rugby,
rugby, tennis, things like that. And it takes seconds. It takes seconds for them to either have a look at the thing on the screen. But I don't know, for some reason in football, it's taken, 3 or 4, 5, 6, 7 angles, multiple minutes for it. And the thing is, sometimes they still get the decisions wrong. But I take on board what you're saying, Mark. If it was used correctly for certain things, for the referee to just, if he's made a mistake, somebody's here, look, come and have a look at this. Or like you say, actually, I didn't have a good angle at that. Let me go and have a quick look at the screen and I'll make my decision from there. Yeah, I can get that. I can get on board with that. But the way it is just now, with every offside decision and these lines being drawn across the pitch, and it's still, for me, it's still not crystal clear whether a guy is offside or onside, even with these lines.
Yeah.
I just think to myself, it's I don't want to say killing the game, but it's making it less enjoyable for me, for it to be stopping and checking.
Sitting in the stadium waiting if they were allowed to celebrate a goal.
Yeah, exactly.
I know.
It's taking the whole buzz from the team who actually scored the goal. It's taking away the atmosphere really after just scoring the goal. Like you see the team celebrating first when they score a goal, and they're all the team hugging each other and things like that. And then it comes up there like any goal now seems to be viewed by VAR. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Any goal, and when the VAR decision is given, then all it is like a tap in the hand or a handshake. You know what I mean? The atmosphere was just taken away from the goal. You know.
Well, you look at David Marshall for the penalty save. Was it against Serbia? Was it? You know, to get to Scotland to a major tournament, he didn't feel like he could go and actually celebrate making a save until he'd got the nod for the referee.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
and that was down to VAR, wasn't it?
Yeah. Guys, I'll just jump in there. Sorry, just nipping over to the live chat there. I see there was a wee question that popped up from David Gallagher. Barry, who was the best player you ever played against?
Well, you know, obviously, probably slightly biased in it, but you know, one of my heroes growing up was Henrik Larsson, and as a result, I would say him. I mean, but obviously, like I say, I played against quite a lot of decent players in my time. Even in the youths and under 21s, you know, you still got to, you know, play against good opposition. You know, and especially in the 21 game, like I played against Frank de Boer. I played against him in a game against Rangers, who was obviously a good player. You know, was fortunate enough to play. You know, well, I didn't actually play with Claudio Caniggia, but you know, I was at the club when he was there. I was a youth at the time, but out and out best player would be Henrik. You know, like I say, a hero of mine growing up. So to actually get an opportunity to play against him, that would be who my answer is.
Well, if we're going to ask who's the best player you played against, we'll have to ask you the question: who's the best player you ever played with?
Ever played with? Probably ability wise, I don't actually know if you guys might know him. There was a guy. We had a midfielder at Dundee at the time, a guy Georgi Nimzadze.
Oh yes, yes,
a Georgian midfielder. He had bundles of ability. He was a real top midfielder. Interestingly enough, he was actually close to a move to Celtic when he was at Dundee. There was a deal on the table for him to go to Celtic the year that they reached Seville. I think it was actually down to not qualifying for the Champions League was the reason the deal fell through. But he, like I said, I don't know how much you guys know about him, but he was a real top midfielder. Centre midfield, bundles of ability, Georgian international.
Yeah, he was a wee bald guy, wasn't he?
No, that was Skpe. That was Tamuri Skpe.
Oh, sorry, right, yes, that was Skpe. You're right. Okay.
I played with Tamuri as well. He was in that Dundee team as well. But you know, Georgi Nimzadze, he was a right good player.
Yeah, I see there. Steph Boy has put up on the live chat as well. I fear we Dembele will head the same way as Farouz. What do you think yourself on that, Barry?
Well, you know something. He's never had an opportunity, has he? You know, he made his debut. I think it was against Hearts. I was actually at the game against Hearts. He came in and he really sort of
he was terrific, wasn't he?
He was fantastic. You know, but you know, he's made, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3. I think you could count on one hand the amount of appearances he's made. And like any young footballer, if you're not getting the opportunity, all you want to do as a kid when you want to play, you want to get minutes. So, you know, I think he's out of contract in the summer, isn't he? So it might be that unfortunately he does move on. However, if there's an opportunity that, you know, we can sign him on a longer contract, I'd love to get get him playing minutes. You know, whether that be he has to go out on loan or, you know, see what he can do. But like that, if players aren't playing, they're not going to want to hang around for too long.
Yeah,
exactly. So, Barry, from myself, it's thanks very much for coming on the show. You'll stay in the line with us because we're going to have some live chat comments. But for myself, thanks very much for coming on and speaking with us tonight. You know, it's been a pleasure for me.
Pleasure, guys. And listen, I want to obviously a big thank you, Paul, to yourself, to Chris, and to Mark for obviously putting this up on a platform. You know, obviously appreciate the hard work and the time that it is for you guys to get involved in this. It's great for us as posters and for fans to be involved and to be able to listen to these podcasts.
Hey, well, I've got 2 questions for you, Barry.
Yep.
JFP wants to know where you're from and if you can say steak pie in Ingen.
He's right. So yeah, I'm from.
I don't know.
It does. So if JP's on the line, I'm from Dundee, and it's Skpe in Ingen.
Right.
There you go.
One last question. Got to ask you. Have you ever seen Bendy Water?
You know something, I feel like my head is a bit like Lee Griffiths is trying to get my head around the Bendy Water question.
That was my go-to question.
So
Barry,
thanks very much for joining us, Barry. But if you want to stay on the line, we'll take some questions for the live chat.
Yeah, no worries, mate. No worries. Happy to stay on, guys.
Mark, do you want to give a few details of stuff there?
I want just Rob Roy for the forum. He's going to donate a £50 Amazon gift card. We'll run a wee competition at the weekend of the cup game. It'll just be found a programme. It's like Wheel of Fortune. You'll answer a question just to and then we'll spin it live on the stream. And the winner will be, you'll see it. There'll be no fixed winner. The stream you'll see what's happening on it. And I've just had an email from Steph Boy to pass on a message to Ben. It's to stay strong, keep his chin up, and you have to stop eating all the good sweeties. And just to tell you, your dad loves you and he's so proud of you, wee man. Hail, hail.
Well, God bless you, wee man.
So lads, if we said if you've any questions for Barry, just add them to the live chat, and myself, Chris, and Mark will read them out. So we've one there from Rob McNair. What about the Scottish Fair appointing a Hearts fan to ref their last game of the season in 1986? Well, that's going back way beyond my time now. So I think that's a bit too far away for anyone to remember there, Rob. So kind of showing your age a bit there, I think.
I think Rob has quite a few what ifs and what abouts there, especially the one. What about the ref giving Jorge Cadetti offside when he was in his own half?
We can remember games, but we can't remember kind of details like that, you know. So,
there is Celtic fans and they're like that. They remember every detail of every game. It just shows you the way people feel about the club. I mean, people ask me about things that I should remember at games I was at, but I just don't remember every single pass and free kick decision that went against me over the year.
Well, the last game in 1986 ended in glory for Celtic. So, with regards to referee, you know, that 86, that was when we won the game, when it won the league at St Mirren, and Hearts lost to Dundee. That was the last game in 1986. So, say that again.
You were playing that?
1986. I was 5-year-old.
one thing I can't kind of understand about the Scottish refereeing is that it seems to be the same refs all the time, reffing the Celtic and Rangers matches. It's either Beeson, Madden, Willie Gollum. It's the same referees. There's
years.
Yeah, it's like there's no.
Because you're meant to be the top. They're meant to be the top referees. Whether we agree with that, that's debatable. But they're putting, this is your top man. We'll put him in charge of our top game because the world's watching.
Yeah,
You know, I think, see the level of performances from referees, and there doesn't seem to be any repercussions. You know, some of the games and some of the, you don't want to say cheating. You really, like I say, I don't want to home in on referees, but some of the performance, some of the things that are missed, like, you know, beating at Ibrox a couple of years back, he could have sent off Morelos 4 times, but
exactly.
There's no punishment. But
you know, is that because are they afraid to send off these players like Morelos because of what Rangers will say about or report them to? Are they afraid of that, you think, or?
I think these decisions are happening all over Scotland every game. It's just because it's games we pay attention to, we highlight it. It's the actual incompetence. I'm not saying there isn't a biasness to a certain extent, because if you support a team, it's ingrained in you. You're going to be biased towards your team, but to me, it's just a general incompetence at the level of referee.
Yeah.
What is that? Sorry,
I agree with Matt. I don't want to suggest that, you know, the referees are pro Rangers, anti Celtic. I just think the standard of refereeing is the issue. And if you're saying that, you know, beating Dallas, you know, column, if they're our best, what does that say about the rest of them? You know, it's the standard of refereeing.
Exactly. You know, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, if that's the best that Scotland has to offer, what's the other referees like? So if they're not getting these games, are they classified as poor referees? Then these lads are, So I have an interest here from Terence Case. He says we're going back to players going out on loan. He said both Iron Christie loans at Killy and Dons made a huge difference in the developments and came back much better players. So like my thing is like that if we send out these players on loan and they actually come back better players, is that saying something about our coaching style as for audio that we have to send them out for them on loan to come better players, or is that down because they're playing first team football all the time? Or
well, the whole idea of sending a player out, it's not because you think they're going to get better coaching somewhere else. It's that you're sending them out to get game time.
Exactly, competitive game time at a high level.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. That's exactly what it is, because if guys like Ayer and Christie at the time, if they're training with this first team squad Monday to Friday, but they're not getting anything at the end of it, there's no game time whatsoever. It's going to hold them back, So to go out and get, to train Monday, whether it be Kilmarnock, Aberdeen, to train on a Monday and a Friday, and then play the game at the end of it. That's what football's all about. There's nothing worse. Like I say that, not that I played football for any sort of length of time, but if you're training Monday to Friday, but there's no sort of end game, because at the end of the day, you're there to play football matches. That's the whole purpose of being a footballer, is to play football matches.
If you take football right back to its grassroots for most of these young ones, they didn't suddenly become 14 or 15-year-old and then go to a football club. They grew up playing either in the street or down the local park or at school, where they were used to playing all the time, and that was what got them. That was probably a big reason why a lot of them fell in love with the game to begin with, and that's what made them want to pursue a career, is because they were playing football. And then to all of a sudden go into a club and find that you're training a lot and you're running around a lot, but you only get a very, very occasional game. If you take that child back to 10 years of age, down the local park, he sees all his mates playing, but he's not allowed to play. Well, he's going to go and find something else to do, isn't he?
Yeah. You know what this is? It's probably not a popular opinion, but see these academies now, guys. I don't know what you guys think about them, but I think to have players, young kids at 6-year-old in a football academy, I just don't see. I don't see how that's a positive thing, to be honest. There's kids at 7, 8 being told they're not good enough.
Yeah, and that's going to kill a young child's confidence straight away. Then, isn't it? Yeah, exactly.
Or there's kids at 6 and 7 being told that they're going to be the next Messi or Larson.
Yeah. You know something, guys? I don't even know if I was playing football at that age. I don't even know if I'd started. I don't think I'd started playing football. But like I've witnessed it firsthand. Social media, a parent on social media saying to their kids, so and so's in tears. He's been told by this club that he's not quite good enough to make it. If a young lad at 7-year-old is told, "Sorry, son, you're not good enough," he's not going to want to play football again.
No, exactly.
He's going to go into a shell. He's going to find something else to do. But I don't know. I played football with my pals till I was 14, 15, 16-year-old. I was picked up by Dundee when I was 16-year-old, and that was all from playing football with my pals and playing on a Sunday. You're a lot more relaxed. Whereas, don't get me wrong, in these academies, I'm sure that there's good coaches and they're getting taught good things, but there's also a big sort of pressure on them to deliver at that age.
And who spotted you then, Barry? Who spotted you back then? You saying you played soccer with your friends? Was that with a local soccer team that you had?
It was. I played for Dundee Celtic Boys, and it was a local scout, and that's the way it used to happen. The scouts would come up to the games, and if they would sort of maybe not even go and watch a specific player, they'd go and watch the game, and if there was a player they felt stood out or a player they thought, they'd maybe go and monitor them 2 or 3 times, and if they felt, actually, you know what, I think this guy would be good to come in and train with Dundee or Dundee United or whoever it may be. That's the way it worked. Now, listen, times have moved on.
I think now since they're kind of starting to play now, they're looking at your stats, like your passing, your running, your ball skills. They're looking at all that even between you even get to the pitch or even have a look at you. They're reading up all these stats about you before they even see you.
Something, Paul, there's data on everything now, isn't there? There's data on how much ground you've covered, what your heart rate is, how many passes, where your your heat maps are. It's it's sports science. That's where we are in the modern day game. But I don't know. To turn round and say a child that is not good enough, or they're not going to make it at a young age, it is what it is. It's the modern day game. But
just going on there about sports science and all that kind of side of it, like all sports science was top notch, and you could say it was top notch under Ronnie Dyler as well, and Brendan Rodgers. Where did it fall between Lennon in that category, do you think?
You know what? Without knowing the ins and outs or being at Celtic Park, but again, I don't want to bash Neil Lennon, but I think probably the players got off with a lot more under Lennon in terms of maybe their diets, maybe their drinking habits. I think Dyler was a stick.
He maybe ignored the results of the beep test, they call it, and that. Do you think Lennon maybe ignored them?
You know something, Mark? I don't know if Lennon was really big on it. You know what I mean? I don't know if he was really big on the sports science thing. Like I say, under Ron, so he might very well have ignored that. And like I say, he knew, sort of touched on it earlier, he played pretty much the same players all the time, whether they were performing or not. What
results Christie was putting in, he was starting on Saturday.
Absolutely, Mark. And you know what? I'm one of his biggest fans. I love Callum McGregor, but I don't think anybody could turn around and say he's had a good season this year. So it might have been that he should have maybe had a wee stint on the sidelines and give somebody else an opportunity.
Do you think Cal McGregor? I don't know. We said about him, like he's going on now, and at the end of the season, he's probably going to play every game now and every cup game till the end of the season. He's about 2 weeks before he goes off to the European Championships, and then it's 3 weeks then since we're going to play our first qualifiers for the Champions League. That's no rest for a professional footballer to be.
You know what? Bawz would probably be a better one than me for this, but I'm sure, was it last season, the season before, he played more minutes than any other player in European football, Callum McGregor. That's crazy. Any other player in any European league, Callum McGregor had played more minutes than anybody. Now, that's bound to have an effect on you.
Before that?
I think Tierney
had
something to do with consecutive games or something as well. Tierney had played more consecutive games than anybody. But, I don't know in terms of, Neil Lennon, but I just have a I get, it's all rumours, guys, but, there's talk of the drinking culture, when he came back in and, diets and stuff went out the window. We don't know if that's played a part or not. We don't even know if that's true. But certainly, I think maybe the professional standards that Rodgers had set up, they probably slipped down a wee bit.
I wouldn't say that maybe diets went out the window, but I think a lot of that was ignored.
Kind of more relaxed, I think. It was more relaxed on it,
It was more advice. Here, this is where you eat. This is where advising you to do that, rather than just this is what you're doing. Stop like we've done under.
It's more meticulous under him, certainly, wasn't it?
Just the standards that people are used to. But Eddie Howe bring these standards back with Roy Keane.
I would probably say they both would. Perfectly honest with you. I think I had a conversation with Paul yesterday about there's probably been 40 to 50 managers linked with the club, and I think every single one has a list of pros and a list of cons, don't they? And I know Roy Keane, I would say it's a small minority would be in favour of him getting the job. I wouldn't be dead against it, if I'm honest, because I think he does bring a certain standard. I don't think he would accept the level of performances that Celtic were showing this season. I think in terms of professionalism, I think he might have raised the bar for that. But obviously there is the fact that he might be a bit of old school manager, the screaming in the face type thing. We just don't know. We don't know who the manager's going to be, but whoever it is, you'll get the backing and the support. There's no doubt about that.
Exactly. Larry, we're going to call this short to a halt. Again, thanks very much for coming on. For myself, I really appreciate it. Mark, Betsy, over to yourselves.
Yeah, well, look, Barry. As far as I'm concerned, it's just fantastic. Listen, I could have died and went to heaven. As soon as as soon as you answered my questions there. But I have to say, Barry, what is refreshing is the fact that you're so content and so comfortable with talking about your career, and there's no doubt the fact that you did play at the pro level shows that you do have a level of insight that most fans don't actually have. Most fans want to just bounce things off each other and say and criticize people and whatever, but you have the most wonderful level-headed insight into the game, and I think you've made our evening show all the better for it. So it's absolutely a massive thank you from me, Barry, and I hope you'll not be a stranger. I hope you'll be on again sometime soon.
Oh no, listen guys, really appreciate it. Obviously, I don't know, Mark, I was saying to Paul, I'm sure that I've been posting on here for about 10 years. I don't know how long it's been running, the show, but I love the forum. I'm on it every day, just as like most people are, and it's an absolute pleasure to come on and have a chat with you guys. And like I say, hopefully there'll be more posters come on and have a blather. But if ever you're needing guys or you're short a number, I'd be happy to come on and have another chat and speak about Celtic. The love for Celtic that we all share.
Well, you've certainly been a star this evening, without a doubt. Thank you.
Appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks very much, but Barry, I can just echo what Paul and Chris have said. You've been fantastic on here tonight, and you're welcome back on anytime. I can remember you posting for as long as I've been on the site as well, so it will be about 10, 11 years now.
Yeah, it's that long now.
But as I say, just thanks very much for coming on and sharing your stories and your experiences with us tonight. Just like to thank everybody that's tuned in. All the subscribers again. If you've not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. Thanks very much for joining us, and hopefully maybe tomorrow I'll have Spotify up and running, so it'll be audio available. Good night, lads. God bless, and a wee another shout out to wee Ben. Hail, wee man. Good night.
Yeah,
Cheers,
thanks
guys.
everyone. Thanks everyone for listening in this evening, and it's really appreciated. Please make sure that you come back the next time as well, and keep posting on the forum as well. And we'll catch up with you. You never know, the next time we might have something to be happy about. So we'll speak soon.